There's no question that despite the pressure on finances on the aviation industry, apart from survival, the other S, sustainability, is top of the agenda. At the first Sustainable Aviation Fuels Conference ahead of EBACE in 2019, focusing on business aviation, we saw dozens of business aviation aircraft make the flight from Farnborough in England to Geneva in Switzerland, all using blends of sustainable biofuels. It was more than a gimmick, it was a statement of serious intent. But operators grumbled that the cost of fuel is too high, its availability is scarce, while the oil industry suggested that it's a lack of demand that's the problem.
What we need to be able to achieve is that there is a bit more market pressure on the system, so I would expect and hope that operators would put a bit more pressure on fuel suppliers and fuel manufacturers to actually produce more of the fuel and have a more appropriate geographical spread. In addition to that, I'm convinced that the business aviation community and industry would be very willing to pay slightly more for the fuel than conventional fuel.
For the long term, we need to scale an awful lot more than we have today. There's already several thousand tons being produced per year at the moment. Over the long term, we're trying to get to a level around 30% of all aviation fuel by 2050, which is a huge scale up to get to that point. So I would say we do have supply. We're ready for the demand to come through now, and I think as more operators, as more companies become aware of the opportunity that there is with the sustainable aviation fuel, the opportunity to reduce the carbon footprint by up to 80%, then I think we'll really start to see that demand come through.
It seemed a typical chicken and egg situation. What does come first? Well, 18 months on, things are changing. BP has become the decarbonisation strategic partner for Australian flag carrier Qantas. The $500 million partnership intends to collaborate on projects including advanced sustainable fuels, advocacy for further decarbonisation in the aviation sector, renewable power, carbon management and emerging technology. And from the manufacturing side, this month, Rolls-Royce announced that it successfully conducted its first tests on a business jet engine using 100% sustainable aviation fuel. The demonstration, conducted at the manufacturer's facility in Dahlewitz in Germany, comes on the heels of a similar test using a Trent 1000 engine in the UK. This latest experiment used a Pearl 700 engine that's under development for the new Gulfstream G700 and confirmed that the company's current commercial and business jet power plants can operate with 100% SAF as a full drop-in option, laying the groundwork for moving this type of fuel towards certification. And as for the fuels, well, there's been some exciting work going on in Europe. The Flight Consortium, created in December and led by the Netherlands Sky Energy, and with LanzaTech from the US as the technology provider, has announced it will build the first of its kind LanzaJet alcohol-to-jet fuel facility, a project that's backed by €20 million from the EU's Horizon 2020 programme. Lauren Harmon of LanzaTech explains.
So the LanzaJet alcohol-to-jet process is a new technology that converts ethanol from any source into sustainable aviation fuel and diesel fuel. And some of the really key properties of this process itself are that it can produce 90% of its product as jet, with the remaining balance as diesel, which is a very high proportion of sustainable aviation fuel from these types of technologies. This particular facility will produce over 37,000 tons of total hydrocarbons per year from ethanol that's sourced from other various suppliers.
The Flight Consortium includes the Fraunhofer Institute, E4 Tech, and of course Sky NRG, a company that's been at the forefront of sustainable aviation fuel since KLM made the first commercial flight using SAF a decade ago.
Indeed, we've been around since that start. So we fueled the first commercial flight of KLM in 2011. And at that time, we were mostly supplying sustainable aviation fuel to the industry for these initial inauguration flights, let's say. So the first time across the Atlantic, the first time in Europe, the the first time in the Americas, you can name it, and we've supplied it basically, and we've supplied over 30 airlines on all continents in the world since. And those were mostly to prove that it was technically possible, right? So can you use it in an aircraft? And is it possible to blend it in the hydrant system, for example, underneath an airport? And we've proven that sustainable aviation fuels are very similar to the fossil jet fuel counterpart. You can use these fuels as a full drop-in. So you don't need any modification to your aircraft. You don't need any modification to your logistical systems. You need to make a blend of up to 50%. And then the fuel behaves exactly the same as fossil jet fuel.
Sky NRG was also involved in the 100% sustainable fuel tests carried out by Rolls-Royce last month, along with Shell and World Energy.
Rolls-Royce is looking at engine tests where they're using 100% of the pure fuel. The biggest difference is that with these fuels, there is no aromatic content in the fuel, while with fossil jet fuel there is. And these aromatics are necessary, and especially older aircraft, to seal all the systems, and they have a sort of a swelling effect on some of the seals, and therefore it's necessary and obligation to have those in, and therefore you need to do the blending. However, in future, and also in the newer aircraft and engine systems like Rolls-Royce is testing today, the products are so good that you don't necessarily need those aromatics anymore.
There are so many different types of feedstock that can go into our aviation fuel of the future. It just takes imagination and seeing what is around you.
LanzaTech actually embarked on an ethanol to jet process specifically because as a company, we produce ethanol, and our technology can produce ethanol from all kinds of waste. It can be gaseous waste fed into our technology, which is a gas fermentation, can be agricultural, forestry waste, ultimately even carbon dioxide and hydrogen as we get to direct air capture.
And it was exactly that fresh air that has excited KLM. At a major sustainability event in the Netherlands, where the Dutch airlines announced this week it had flown a passenger flight using part sustainably produced synthetic kerosene, another initiative is the construction of a demonstration factory for sustainable jet fuel using captured CO2. It's from the Zenith initiative, which includes Sky Energy and Rotterdam Airports and Climeworks. And it uses a combination of innovative technologies to focus on CO2 neutral aviation with synthetic kerosene. So the fuels are coming, but who's going to pay the price?
I think there's a lot of interest, and there has always been from the aviation community to start developing these initial flights. So it starts with the KLM, British Airways, other big airlines that take a role in the development. In the United States, United Airlines, Delta, Alaska, all did their share and are doing their share. We see also a bit of a shift into the business aviation, indeed supplying VistaJet and others. But one other element that I would like to touch is, let's say, the consumer, and most specifically the corporate consumer, right? So we've got corporate programs, for example, Board Now, where we signed up Microsoft lately, where these bigger players can pay a premium for their business travel. And with that premium and with those funds, we can set up new initiatives like flight. The aviation industry needs to do their share as well, right? It cannot all be voluntary, and only when the price premium is right. You need to do your share, and there's going to be mandates for sustainable aviation fuels as well. And I'm sure of that. And that will change the market dynamics completely, right? Because then airlines are and countries are obligated to blend in a certain percentage of renewable fuel. And then we just need to be there to produce it for them in the most efficient and sustainable way.
Well, I know we're going to be hearing a lot more about these fuels. The possibilities are endless. And we, as an industry, well, we need to be showing that we're committed too.